know because a handful of folk told me as they left that they were not going to stay if there was no air conditioning. I've also had a couple of folks tell me this morning about how they made an effort to come back from the beach a little bit early to be in worship. I've had someone else tell me how they decided to wait until after worship to go and visit their daughter. I really think, I want to say this to you, that if First Baptist Church of Ahoskie doesn't go the extra mile, if we don't do things like this on a regular basis, people will be talking about us like they do other area churches. I went to First Baptist last Sunday and there were 12 people there. We are very vulnerable. Hear me. We are very vulnerable to decline. And so, if we don't, I can only ask our young people to make so many babies. I can only take that so far. Okay? They're doing a great job. But if we don't make efforts to be really good and faithful church members, our church is in danger. So thank you for doing that. So on my way back from Massachusetts, Friday, I was driving the van and I had the girls with me. And one of the girls says, "Trey." And I say, "Yes, Chloe." And Chloe says, "Trey," with a real sarcastic tone, "if you're drifting, come back with me." And I said to my friend Chloe, I said, "Chloe, when I'm preaching and I notice people are counting ceiling tiles, I need to do something." And she says to me, "Well, Trey, who counts ceiling tiles?" And I said, "Well, your grandmother, for one." And she said to me, "Oh, you're right." All right. So you resist the temptation to count ceiling tiles. Let us read together, if we may. Isn't it good to be together? Isn't it good to be with our Christian family? Isn't it good to be in the house of the Lord, even if it's a little hot? We are blessed people. Esther chapter 1. Let's read together, if we may, verses 10 through 20. I would encourage you on your own. I don't know what your Bible reading habits are, but my plan is for us to spend some time in the book of Esther throughout the remainder of the summer. So why don't you read it? It's a marvelous, marvelous account. Esther chapter 1, verses 10 through 20. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biththa, Harbana, Bigtha, Abigatha, Zesthar, and Carcas, the 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and the princes, for she was beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command delivered by the eunuchs. Then the king became very angry, and his wrath burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for it was the custom of the king, so to speak, before all who knew the law and justice, and were close to him, Karshina, Zesthar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media who had access to the king's presence and sat in the first place in the kingdom. According to the law, what is to be done with Queen Vashti because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuchs? In the presence of the king and the princes, Memucan said, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also all the princes and all the peoples who were in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, causing them to look with contempt on their husbands by saying, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought into his presence, but she did not come. This day the ladies of Persia and Media, who have heard of the queen's conduct, will speak in the same way to all the king's princes, and there will be plenty of contempt and anger. If it pleases the king, let a royal edict be issued by him, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, so that it cannot be repealed, that Vashti may no longer come into the presence of King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is more worthy than she. When the king's edict, which he will make, is heard throughout all his kingdom, great as it is, then all women will give honor to their husbands, great and small. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Shall we pray? Holy God, indeed, you are so good to us. Even in the midst of pain and confusion, even as we grieve with Joanna and David, even so, we acknowledge your goodness. We are grateful for our country, for all of its imperfections, for all of its shortcomings, for all of the mistakes that we've made through the years. This is home, and we are grateful for the freedoms that we experience. And I pray that we might continue towards being a more equitable nation. We are grateful that in the midst of our circumstances today, that it is not as hot as it could be. And so we ask that you might speak to us, that we might focus as best as we can, that the heat might not be too much of a detriment. And oh God, challenge us with the example of Queen Vashti today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So I wonder exactly why. As I have been reading the book of Esther in preparation for this new sermon series, as I have been engaging with Esther chapter 1, I wonder exactly why. The text doesn't say, the Bible doesn't specify, but why did Queen Vashti, why did she refuse King Ahasuerus' request to display her beauty before all of the people at this big party that the king threw? Was Queen Vashti sick? Perhaps she didn't feel well. Perhaps she had a headache. Perhaps she had a stomach ache. Maybe she was sick. That's a possibility. Was Queen Vashti just in a bad mood? Sometimes you catch us in a bad mood, you catch us on a bad day, and we can be a bit rebellious. Or is what we have here in Esther chapter 1 a nice example of an ancient Me Too moment? Maybe Queen Vashti had been objectified before. Maybe she was tired of it. Maybe she didn't want to go in before her drunken husband and his drunken friends and present herself so that they could look at her. Maybe The request was that she come before the king and his friends in nothing but her royal crown. I don't know. This is all speculation. The Bible oftentimes doesn't answer some of the basic questions that we have, and this is the case here, so we don't know. But whatever it was something. It was something that caused Vashti to stand up and to say no to her husband and to say no to her king. In the text before us, Queen Vashti, this woman, she was fearless, she was strong, and she was brave. And sometimes, church, when we live out our faith, when we are fearless, when we are strong, when we are brave, when we take a risk and do what we know is right, there's a price to pay. And Vashti paid that price. She is no longer the queen. Let me take just a few moments, if I may, because I anticipate that we'll spend a few weeks in Esther. Let me take just a few moments, if I may, to introduce to you the book of Esther. Esther is hard to put down. I would wonder, in this assembly today, we have a lot of folks who have been reading the Bible for many years, and I wonder how familiar some of you are who are in that category, how familiar you are with the book of Esther. I admit to you, though I've read it before, I had to read it and reread it again to get it fresh in my mind. And one of the things that I discovered is that this document, this book, is exceptionally difficult to put down. It's a wonderful narrative. It's filled with suspense. It's filled with drama. Are you aware, get this, that God is never mentioned in the book of Esther? God is never mentioned in the book of Esther, yet God's hand is all over the circumstances in the book of Esther. So it's a great read. And one thing that struck me, I don't know if you are in this category or not, but I know that some Christians struggle with all of the miraculous that is in the Bible. That some Christians have intellectual difficulties because they don't always see the miraculous in their own lives that they see in the Bible. Maybe you're not in that category, but if you are, I think you'll find the book of Esther especially refreshing. There is nothing overly miraculous in the book of Esther other than the way God is working throughout the narrative. So I'd encourage you to spend some time with it. Though we focused on Vashti today, Esther will soon become the central character. She, at the direction of her cousin, there's a nice debate as to whether or not Mordecai was an uncle or a cousin. I'm going to go with cousin. But she, at the direction of her cousin Mordecai, saves the Jewish people from the evil Haman. So we will spend some time, probably on Wednesday nights, deciphering and going through all of these different characters and discussing their role in the narrative. The book of Esther, the events described in the book of Esther, though the actual book would have been written significantly later, but the events described in the book of Esther occurred during the reign of King Ahasuerus. There's a bit of debate. Most folk think this is King Xerxes, who reigned from 486 to 465 BC. A minority opinion is that it's Artaxerxes, who reigned from 465 to 424. But whatever the case, Esther and her kindred were living in Susa, modern-day Iran, due to the Babylonian exile that had occurred 100 years earlier. So Vashti, In our text today, the only place she's mentioned in the biblical text, the Bible, Queen Vashti says no to her husband, the king. Ladies, have you ever said no to your husband who is not a king? In this case, Queen Vashti says no to her husband who is also her king. The king has this elaborate party where he is demonstrating his wealth to all of those under his command. And he even, the text says, allows people to his outside garden who happened to be in Susa at the time. We are told that the wine flows freely. We are told that there are a bunch of drunken men. And the king asked Queen Vashti to come and to present her beauty before him and his colleagues. And Queen Vashti, for whatever reason, says no. And then the king asked for advice from his princes. So notice verse 15, if you will. According to the law, what is to be done with Queen Vashti because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuchs? And they say, ladies, don't you love this? Right? The king asked his advisors. The king asked his vice presidents, if you will, what should I do? I've asked Queen Vashti to come before me to display her beauty before me so I can show her off to my buddies. She has declined. She has said no. What should I do? And this small circle of men say, King, you've got to do something, because if you don't do something, our wives will act in the same way. If you allow the queen of the kingdom to be disobedient to you, and word gets out, our wives will be disobedient to us, and that will happen all throughout the kingdom. Even the commoner, his wife, will not do what he tells her to do, and so action must be taken. And so they tell the king to dismiss Queen Vashti and to find another. Notice, if you will, verse 21. This word pleased the king and the princes, and the king did what Memucan proposed. So Vashti is now out, and in chapter 2 we will discover together the rise of Queen Esther. You all know the account of Rosa Parks, don't you? You're familiar with the account of Rosa Parks? I discovered in my own research in preparation for today that there are a bit of things circulating around this account that aren't necessarily true. For example, that she was tired, that her feet hurt. My understanding is that she later said, no, I wasn't tired. I just wasn't going to give up my seat on the bus. So December the 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks said to a white bus driver who had asked her to move out of the colored section because the bus was filling up and there wasn't room for the white folks to sit down. The bus driver, whom Rosa Parks had had conflict with before, the bus driver said to Rosa Parks, get up and give your seat to this white person. And Rosa Parks did not get up. Now, interestingly enough, she was not the first woman to do this. There were two other ladies who had defied orders before, but this was the one that really set in place what came to be known as the Montgomery bus boycott, organized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which was exceptionally successful because the African American community, by and large, stopped riding the buses. And this, of course, led to desegregation. So what about you? Can I ask you on this hot Sunday, would you believe when I was in Massachusetts last week, we all go to mission sites. They break the youth up into groups, and then the adults are assigned with a group, and I drove the van for some of the kids from my mission site. And we were at what really was a much larger version of the Hosty food pantry. It's a big food pantry, about 15 minutes from the campus of Gordon College. And our job was to sort out vegetables and beans and soups. They had been donated canned goods, and they were all in a box together, and we were to sort them out. So we were up in the third floor, kind of an attic area, and it was 72 degrees outside. 72 degrees outside. And this woman from Massachusetts says, if it gets any hotter than this, I'm going to live it. And I said, what? She said, somebody please put a window up. I said, ma'am, I'm sure my accent tells you I'm from North Carolina. So, as we gather on this hot Sunday in our sanctuary, can I ask you, what about you? Vashti and Rosa Parks lived out a fearless faith. They were brave and they were strong. We are not sure why Vashti did what she did. We don't know. But it was something that caused her to defy the orders of the king and her husband. And she said, no more. I'm not going to be objectified by a bunch of men. Been there, done that, no more. And Rosa Parks was a strong Christian woman. And she was also a civil rights leader. Queen Vashti stood for justice. Rosa Parks sat for justice. She said, I'm not moving. I've had enough. This isn't right. I'm not going. So why do you do it? If you're drifting, come back with me. I want you to get this. Why do you do it? Why do you live out a fearless faith? Why do you live out a version of Christianity that is strong and brave? Why do you follow Jesus when it is risky? Why do you follow Jesus when it is risky? When it's going to cost you something. It may cost you your job. It may cost you your girlfriend or your boyfriend. It may cost you your reputation. It may cost you money to do what is right and comply with the teachings of Jesus. Why do you do it? Or how about this? What if I ask the question this way? What is your something? What is your something? What is it that inspires you to live out a risky faith? What is it that inspires you to stand when it may cost you something? What is it that inspires you to sit when it may cost you something? What is it that inspires you to be faithful to the teachings of Jesus Christ when it becomes very risky and inconvenient and uncomfortable? What is your something? What is it that inspires righteous anger within you? What is it that inspires righteous anger within you? And you say no more. I don't care. I'm not going there. What is your something? What is your something? I trust